Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's web conference, Start Strong, Building Healthy Teen Relationships, Engaging Youth in and Out of School. We will begin in just a few minutes. This is David Lee, and just want to welcome you, and we'll be starting very shortly. We'll be just testing speakers, but welcome to today's web conference, Start Strong, Building Healthy Teen Relationships. I'm going to be doing a few speaker sound checks just to make sure that speakers are on the line. So do I have... Lisa, are you online?
Hi, David, I'm here.
Great. And do I have Emily? Hello, Emily?
I'm here. I just had to unmute.
Great. And Nancy, are you online?
I'm here.
And Christina, are you online?
I am also here.
And Paige, are you online?
Yes, hi, David.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Today's web conference, Start Strong, Building Healthy Teen Relationships, Engaging Youth in and Out of School, will begin very shortly for today's webinar. And so please go ahead, and we will be waiting for just a few minutes for more people to be able to join today's session. So thank you for joining us. While you're waiting, why don't you just let us know what city and state you are from, just so we can get a little bit of a sense of where people are who are attending today's conference. So go ahead and let us know where people are coming from for today's webinar. We have Greeley, Colorado, Portland, Oregon, Brockton, Maine, Portland, Maine, Massachusetts, lots of Ohio, Virginia, Moore, Ohio, Bridgeport, Connecticut, Commerce, Georgia, Denton, Texas, Jessica, who I actually spoke with earlier, Saskatchewan, Canada, I probably mispronounced that, Sundance, Wyoming, Cookeville, Tennessee, Oswego, New York, I'm probably mispronouncing lots of names, Ketchum, Idaho, St. Cloud, Minnesota. It's great to see so many people joining us for today's web conference, Start Strong, Building Healthy Teen Relationships, Engaging Youth in and Out of School. It's great to be able to let people write down where you're joining us. We have people from all across the country being able to join us. And in other words, we also have Hawaii. Beverly is joining us from Hawaii, and Deborah is joining us from Ohio. And so we will be starting in just a moment for today's web conference. Well, thank you. This is now the time to begin. So welcome to today's web conference, Start Strong, Building Healthy Teen Relationships, Engaging Youth in and Out of Schools. And it's a pleasure to be able to have you joining us. I am David Lee, and working with my colleagues here at Futures Without Violence to help facilitate this session. So I've advanced the wrong piece. So today's facilitators are myself, and I work with the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault and Prevent Connect, and I'm joined with Lisa Sohn from Futures Without Violence. How are you doing, Lisa?
I'm great. Thanks, everyone, for joining today.
Okay, it's really great to see so many people joining us for today's session to talk about this really important topic about how we're going to be able to work with engaging youth in and out of school to build healthy teen relationships. So before we begin, we're going to just we're going to just do quickly just a little bit about how to be familiar with using this technology. We do have a text chat. Most of you figured out how to send your text chat, and we'll want to be able to, you just write it in, and you see a tab there that says for everyone. There's also, and those comments will be shared with everyone, and so it's a great way to be able to ask questions during this. I don't think we are actually doing a polling question. We'll do that in a moment, so let's come, I'll get back to that shortly. We do have slides, and a recording of this web conference will be available on Futures Without Violence's website, and you see the URL there. And if someone can put a copy of that link into the text chat, that would be great. I probably can do that too, but I have to move to the slide to be able to make a copy of that. So this is just another way to be able to get access, and this, as you say, we will have a recording of the session available, and I did get the link in here. If you want to be able to send a private chat to the host, you can click the host tab, and you can be able to get private chat for help. We also do have a way that you can be able to call Adobe Technical Support at 800 422-3623 if you need any support. And you can see, so this is pretty much how to be able to use this. We want to just get a little bit of a question for the audience. What best oh, I'm not seeing a slide here, so it's a little, oh, I see it. Just took a little time to get there. What best describes your organization? So go ahead and just let us know what describes what type of organization you are so we can get a feel for the types of organizations who are represented today. Are you with, and now I'm going to try to do my quick analysis by reading this. So I see Department of Health, Child Protection, Anti-Violence, Youth Development, more health departments. We have India in the house. Training and technical assistance, a lot of nonprofits, state mental health, teaching, YWCA, batterers intervention program, a lot of domestic violence agencies, dual domestic violence and sexual assault centers, hospital emergency room. I'm seeing a lot of people working in child sexual abuse prevention. I'm seeing a lot of people who are doing abuse, nonprofit working with immigrant survivors, resource center, so prevention educator, rape crisis center. So once again, I think, Lisa, I'm seeing a lot of people who are primarily from rape crisis centers and domestic violence agencies, a lot from public health and different types of health clinics. Yeah, so and people from schools, love to know if there's people who are from schools attending this now in the middle of summer when they're probably all on vacation. So, but we've got Bunny who works with after-school programming. So I've got a few people at a pregnancy outreach club. Great. Well, it's wonderful, Lisa, to see the wide range of people who are joining us today. So let's move forward and introduce our speakers that we're going to be able to have for today's presentation. So I'm really pleased to be able to have representatives of many of the different Start Strong programs throughout the country who'll be presenting with Lisa today, sharing their experiences of working with youth in and out of school. So we have Nancy Carroll from Start Strong Wichita. How you doing, Nancy?
Hey, I'm great, David.
Wonderful. I understand you're actually in Atlanta today, not in Kansas, but you're...
That's right. We can do this from any place at this point.
Wonderful. Well, great to have you joining us. We also have Christina Garcia, who is with Sojourner House and Start Strong Rhode Island. So, hi, Christina. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, David. How are you?
Doing great. And I understand you're actually sitting in a room with Nancy in Atlanta right now.
I am also in Atlanta, and I'm actually also here with our colleague from Start Strong Boston, Nicole Daly. So.
Oh, wonderful. Well, great to have Nicole from Strong Boston here. And then, wonderful. We also have on the West Coast, we have Emily Austin, who is joining us, and she's with Peace Over Violence and Start Strong Los Angeles. How you doing, Emily?
I'm good. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful to be able to have you. And now to be able to get back to the other coast, we have Paige Nelson from RIASAP or Start Strong Bridgeport, because it's a lot easier for me to say Start Strong Bridgeport over in Connecticut. How you doing, Paige?
Great. Hi, everyone.
Wonderful. Well, we're really glad to have each of you here to be able to talk about this work and be able to think about how we're to share your pieces. So I'm going to hand it over to Lisa, and if you can talk a little bit, Lisa, about Start Strong, just to give a little bit of context.
Great. Thanks, David. And again, welcome everyone to this webinar. Just to give you a quick overview of Start Strong, it was a 4-year initiative of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in partnership with Blue Shield of California Foundation. It was the largest investment ever made to focus on middle school youth and healthy relationships, $18 million in 11 communities over those 4 years. The goal was to explore innovative and practical solutions to preventing teen dating violence and to promote healthy teen relationships among that 11 to 14-year-old youth. And we really wanted to look at the group that was kind of pre-dating or just beginning to date and form their ideas about what relationships should be like. Futures Without Violence served as a national program office, working with national partners including SIN Partners for our media and communications, and also RTI International.
Lisa, we just lost your voice, so I am not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Here's a map of the communities of Start Strong. There were 11 diverse communities across the country. We very intentionally chose different kinds of lead organizations to take on the Start Strong task. We had traditional DVSA agencies. We had youth development organizations, some healthcare organizations, lots of different types of groups, because we wanted to see at the end of 4 years if in different communities across the country with different partners leading the effort, if we could say that this was something that could work in almost any community that you went to. Start Strong used a very familiar socio-ecological model. We targeted first youth directly, reaching them in school and out of school, which we'll hear more of today. We then looked at the influencers around them, some of the older teens, as well as parents, coaches, teachers, other people who would influence their attitudes about relationships. And then we looked at changing policy and environmental factors to make sure that that bucket was filled with the right structures and supports. And then, of course, going a wider circle of making sure that we were changing social norms and utilizing social marketing and communications to get the word out into the wider community about healthy relationships. Today we're going to focus on in-school and after-school programs, and as David introduced the speakers, we're really excited to have 5 of our site leaders with us, since 3 of them are in Atlanta together, and Nicole from Start Strong Boston, please feel free to jump in whenever you'd like.
Great. So thank you, Lisa. So what we're going to be talking about is getting the lessons learned from the Start Strong schools, and I think that's such an important piece of the work. And this is, of course, part of one of 5 web conferences that Futures Without Violence has been doing about Start Strong, and so now we're getting a chance to talk about the school work. So let's move to a question for our audience, and let's get a sense of what you want to be able to learn, and I know what you hope to learn from this web conference. So go ahead and write in, what do you want to be able to learn from hearing about the insights of the work that's been going on in Start Strong, so we can get a little bit of a context and help our speakers. And I see multiple people are typing away. So Lisa, it'll be interesting to see. So what did not work? What things have worked and haven't worked is what Donna's wondering about. How to engage the jocks and popular kids, successes and challenges, not reinvent the wheel and see what's worked well, engaging males, and middle school students to take healthy relationships seriously, and young adults and preteens thinking about that, a lot of this, engaging men, another theme that we've seen, engaging teens, especially young men. So I'm noticing an engaging men theme has come up, a lot about how to involve youth, and I think a lot of people are also talking about the healthy relationships and looking at that. And Bunny talks about using older teens as mentors, which is an important part of the work that went on, and the differences in after-school and in-school approaches. And so I'm seeing a lot of questions, once again, the engaging men theme and getting educators to realize this is important. So Lisa, I'm seeing a lot of pieces that are being asked about really understanding what we've learned about how to be able to engage different populations of, whether it's teen moms, multicultural teens, children of immigrants. I'm seeing a lot of questions like that. So Lisa,
yeah, and all groups that we've definitely worked with in Start Strong communities.
Great. So let's do a little, let's move to the next slide and let's ask a little poll. And the first poll question that I'm going to go put onto our screen here is, are you current, you should see a box that's going to appear, and go ahead and pick the box. Are you currently delivering healthy relationship programming? So go ahead, let's get a sense of who is here. And so I see people are voting away, and we've got, I'm still waiting to get the percentage. Oh, we've got over 58, 59 of you have voted, but not all of you have had a chance to vote yet. Let's view the votes and let you share the results. And so what we'll see here, oh, I'm sorry, I have to, was everyone seeing this as we go? I'm not sure how to share the results.
Yep, they should be seeing it.
Everyone's seeing it live. Okay, so we see 4% of you have been delivering healthy relationships, and 35% of you have not been. So about 2/3 of our audience has been. So we have a lot of people who draw on experiences, and we have a lot of people that are looking for more. So I'm going to go ahead and move that off, and let's move to Christina. And Christina, can you sort of start with us about talking about schools and why you see schools are an important place for us to do this work?
Sure, David. Thank you. So there's a bunch of different venues and ways that we can reach young people, but we specifically chose to focus on schools. And why is that? Because that's where they are. That's where most adolescents are spending most of their time. So 98% of young people between the ages of 7 to 13 are in both schools, and they're spending most of their time in schools with teachers than they are outside of school. And also, it's a great way to reach parents because parents, for the most part, are still involved in middle school activities. And there's an opportunity to reach them there, and also much more in the middle school than you would in high school, for example, because in high school, that's when parents are starting to detach themselves more. And it's a focal point for community life. We think of schools as a hub of community, a gathering place, a place where social norms are being affected. And this is where most of our young people are interacting with their peers and establishing those social norms within that culture. And because of everything I just mentioned, historically, schools are such a critical part in public health. And more importantly, according to research, connections exist between students' immediate health status and academic performance. So as most of you guys are community providers and working in domestic violence agencies, we know that one of the warning signs for teen dating violence is when you're starting to notice a young person's disinterest, and also they're starting to do, not being interested in their their curricular activities, or, getting lower grades and not wanting to go to schools. So we as domestic violence providers, we already identify that as a warning sign. And then the other piece of research is that it shows that well-designed and well-implemented school health programs can promote healthy behaviors. So comprehensive health programs that are facilitated in a safe space with really caring, trusting adults do provide an environment where young people can succeed academically and also improve their social and emotional health. And the need is there. We all know that our young people do need this healthy education, healthy relationship education. The classroom can be the only place where many young people receive health information, and it also could be the only place where they build that essential personal social skills, because this is the time that they're spending the most time with their peers. And this is the place where they have positive behavior is consistently reinforced by these caring adults, like their teachers. Because again, this is where they're spending most of their time. But unfortunately, our reality is that few schools are operating well-coordinated, high-quality, and cost-effective health programs.
Let's move to Paige, and I think we're here going to move to Paige. And why don't you talk about some of the curriculum? It's Curriculum Plus, this says. Why is that there?
Right. It's there because we want to make sure that everyone knows, and I'm sure everyone does know, but curriculum does not exist on an island and work all by itself. Probably only 5% effective in of itself, and you really have to pull that other 95% in with work in the outside environment, with relationships work, with putting some personality in the presentation. And I know we learned a lot through our work with Start Strong that the more that we can relate to the students, the more they're open to learning, the more they're comfortable with it. And I know a lot of people had mentioned in their questions that they wanted to learn how to engage the cool kids and the jocks. And I think one way is to have some cool people or who are confident and enjoying the material themselves to deliver the material. And I know a big lesson for me in Bridgeport was to have male facilitators. That was always very helpful. I did always try to have a male and a female deliver our curriculum together. And my facilitators were always around college age. So they were older than the middle schoolers, but more mature, but they were still very cool and very accessible to them. And one thing that we want to emphasize with the curriculum work is that it's all part of the school climate, and it's so important to try to infuse that curriculum in the hallways and in the wider school atmosphere. You know, a lot of students in middle school don't feel comfortable in the classroom. It can be a scary place. They feel nervous. They're socially awkward. You know, they're learning about relationships themselves and have a lot of new concerns and worries and fears about their peer group and being cool. So depending on the school climate, it might be a really healthy and vibrant school climate, or it might be one in which students don't feel safe, and it's one that's more permeated by fear and anxiety. I know a lot of our schools in Bridgeport, a lot of the students don't feel very safe, and so the school climate can be tense. But when we talk about school climate, we're talking about the rules and norms, that sense of physical security and a sense of social and emotional security. We really also mean things like respecting diversity. Does the climate support have supportive and caring adult relationships for students? I know in one of our schools we had teachers helping us, and we quickly realized that the dynamic between the teachers and the students was very antagonistic, and it wasn't a good relationship. So we tried to bring in more facilitators to sort of counterbalance that, because that's also can damage that sense of safe space and teaching the curriculum. Supportive and caring peer relationships are also important, and feeling connected to the school. One thing, when we were delivering the curriculum, I always tried to have my facilitators available in the hallways while the students were walking by, so they could have conversations or just be present. And that's always important. That always shows the students that, hey, we're teaching you about healthy relationships. We also want to model that for you and have a healthy relationship with you as well.
So Paige, I think, it's great. So you have this quote here. Why don't we do this, and then I will ask my question next.
Sure. This is a quote, and by this we mean that we always need to be patient yet persistent as we try to teach our curriculum. For me, we taught the Safe Dates curriculum, and it's important to be very, very patient and to be very accommodating to school. We were always very careful to teach in whatever class the school was most amenable to. We were happy to come in on whatever day. We did a lot of site visits to make sure things were going well. And we tried to be prepared for whatever might come our way, and then just be persistent, be ready to follow up if there's ever a phone call from the school.
Paige, there's a question from Catherine about, you talk about how you got college students to be able to do the work. How did you get those college students to work with you, and who were they, and how did you get those volunteers?
Sure, great question. Initially, I had a lot of college students who wanted to do internships. This is a really interesting field for a lot of college students, whether they're going into social work, they're interested in working with youth, they're interested in education. So there were a lot of volunteers. But as our program grew, I realized I needed to have more facilitators. So I wrote a grant and started an AmeriCorps program that through which I hire and train, and I'm able to stipend college students to work about 10 or 15 hours a week, and they get a small scholarship and a small stipend. But there are many other ways through internship programs or providing a small stipend, or a lot of schools require community service. So there's a lot of different ways, but I've found that many college students are very interested in doing this work. It's very meaningful and fun.
You know, there's two questions that actually align with each other. One said, I'm 25 years old. Am I getting too old? And then Bunny answers that, sort of wrote at the same time, she found a combination of older, more experienced facilitators and college-aged ones worked well, so you get two different pieces. So what's your perspective on, is 25 too old?
No, definitely not. We're all young at heart, right? No, I think any age is great. For me, I would say most of my facilitators are from 21 to 25, so they're right in that age. But I also can appreciate having facilitators of any age. I think that's great. That is the route we went, with sort of that college range and graduate age range.
Great. Well, thank you. Let's move on to our next slide, and let's ask a question of the audience once again. So what we want to be able to do is, with the audience, is to be able to get a sense, because Paige, you talk about the importance of creating a healthy school climate. And it's not just a curriculum, but it's about creating the healthy climate. So I'd like to hear from the audience, what programming have you done to create a healthy school climate? Let's get a sense of this, of being able to, of thinking about what have you been able to do. And while Jennifer was answering the prior question, I think it actually does contribute to it. She got high school seniors on their senior project doing work, and that does indeed help set the climate by having seniors being involved in the work that's going on to be able to help create change, even if they're not leading the presentations themselves, by being involved in the community, make a difference. So please go ahead and write in the text chat. I'd love to see some people writing, what programs have you done to create a healthy school environment? And so after participating in health after-school programs, so getting work there, and teen outreach clubs and coalitions, and being able to present, and May talks about a character education initiative, and Catherine talks about Green Dot, which is the bystander intervention program, and Janine talks about a peer leadership program where students help facilitate workshops, and I'm a big fan of peer leadership. Done a lot of peer leadership programs over the years. And Allison wonders, what have been successful approaches to engaging the school staff? And I think we'll probably, Allison, I'm going to come back at a little bit later, and thinking about the school staff. Let's hear a little bit more before we get into that, because school staff is indeed an important piece about how we're going to be able to move forward. And so people have been using Real Kids Getting Real and Expect Respect, and I saw another Green Dot person, and conflict resolution is another way to be able to move forward. And so I see more people talking about the Green Dot. So, and great, and the best in the weight training. So with this, let's move over to, I'd like to hand the podium over to Emily over in Los Angeles and talk about curricula, which is one piece of the puzzle. So go ahead, Emily.
Great. Thanks, David. I think one of the first questions is, how do we affect where teens are getting their information about healthy relationships, and how do we know that that information we're supplementing and giving is appropriate and is going to work to change and affect social norms? Like David said, peers have a really huge influence in the information that that teens have about healthy relationships. And this picture just demonstrates it perfectly, because teens are asking teens about their relationships and about sex and about the important parts of their lives, more and more, from middle school to high school. So in this project, we really focused on finding materials that were proven and evidence-based and showed effectiveness. Our broad considerations were the materials were based on state and national standards on health education. So these were kind of vetted standards by professionals about what are healthy relationships and what is the appropriate type of health education. Also, the effectiveness was evidence-based in behavior change demonstrated by the evaluations. And behavior change is different than knowledge change, just knowing the right answer. This is really showing a change in your choice and how you react in a certain situation. We also looked at the curricula content. And working with young people, and especially middle schoolers, it was really important to have a wide variety of topics that are involved in dating abuse, such as lessons on sexual assault, stalking, information regarding how to handle situations like jealousy, really defining what a healthy relationship looks like, and the kind of Bill of Rights or the rights you have to have a healthy relationship. The last part is really important as well. The diversity of the curriculum delivery, where the curriculum is going to be delivered. We need to choose curricula and constantly challenge curricula to be flexible and acknowledge diversity based on individual dynamics within a school. So in Los Angeles, we're working in a very highly urban population with a very large school district, Los Angeles Unified School District. And we had to use and adopt the curriculum safe dates in order to really reach a high population of boys and girls of color, Spanish-speaking, and a wide diversity of staff as well in the schools. So we had to constantly check in to make sure that the lessons that we were doing, the activities were culturally relevant to our community. Another major consideration is, can these materials be integrated into existing structures? Can they be put into a health class? Is there English or art curriculum? Also, we've had success in science classes in Los Angeles. We actually went through all the middle school science classes to deliver this information. And PE, physical education, is another place where we've had success in doing in-classroom presentations and curriculum delivery. The curriculum needs to be flexible, like I said before. So we need to work with schools to allow the sessions to fit in within allotted time frames, 50-minute classes, 20 to 30-minute classes, and be available in multiple settings. So again, being able to adjust to the setups. One of the logistical lessons we've learned is working in science rooms. Often the tables don't move. The equipment is kind of strange, not the normal equipment you'd have in a English room, and we've had to make adjustments and plan for when we're doing activities how to move around the actual logistics of the room. We also really, in Los Angeles and throughout the project, I believe, have had this interesting debate around classroom teachers versus outside instructors coming in to deliver the information and engage the students. And one of the things we've seen is classroom teachers have this constant presence. They can become the advocates on your school grounds. If they're trained and they understand this information and are comfortable delivering it, they can monitor problems, be resources, and be a direct line between your organization and the school. Plus, they're educated and invested and credentialed to deliver and be teaching kids in that setting. But on the other side, the flip side, is sometimes teachers aren't comfortable delivering information around healthy relationships, sexual assault, and taking the questions and developing that safe space that Paige was talking about. So on the side, having an outside instructor come in can really breathe life into the curricula and really allow people to build relationships with someone that is not necessarily giving them a grade. And we've seen success in both arenas in Los Angeles, and I know a lot of projects have done that as well in Start Strong. They've kind of balanced between bringing outside instructors and bringing the teachers along or counselors along in educating as well.
Emily, in this, there's a comment here that I think that Bunny makes. It's a good one that actually illustrates the point you're talking about, is that it's not just being able to deliver the curriculum, but also being able to read the students and how they're reacting. So sometimes students could be triggered by a presentation, or there can be issues that come up, and so that the preparation is not just being able to give the lesson, but be able to respond to those situations. And there's advantages and disadvantages to having inside and outside people, classroom teachers or outside instructors, but it's just another factor to consider.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I feel is really important whenever you go into a school or any population audience is really have the referrals ready too, and the knowledge to identify someone that might be having trouble with the information and reading the students. So that's where, if you have a classroom teacher that knows their community organizations really well, that's fabulous. If you have outside instructor that's directly keyed into those organizations, you can get direct referrals and help for students that might be having difficulty with this issue.
Okay, let's,
go ahead.
so why don't we go ahead and move to the next slide, Emily?
All right. So one of the teaching considerations is really that we've discovered over the studies and our experiences that curriculum needs to involve multiple sessions in order to really be effective. That one-time sessions and assemblies are not effective in sustaining social change and development and behavior change. But I will say that one-time sessions and assemblies are great for relationship building and general awareness building within a community. A lot of times our relationships that we used in Start Strong started with a couple assemblies and getting to know the staff and the administrators and building that relationship there. Then getting the buy-in to do 11-session curriculum development and delivery. Also, small classrooms or groups work better versus an assembly where you can't really even read the students that you're presenting with and to. So that small group session classroom is a good opportunity to get to know people's personalities, read the students, and really get a relationship built on a more direct basis versus trying to just handle an assembly with 200 students. We've given assemblies for 500 students, and although the information is really critical and interesting for them, you're not able to interact and really work through these issues with young people in that kind of setting. The varied teaching methods and activities were really important, and both curriculum that we used, Safe Dates and 4th-R, had a lot of engagement activities, and that was key. Getting them out of their seats, doing role models, including up-to-date videos, images, talking about the issue in brainstorms, doing worksheets, keeping it really active and interactive. So we recommended action steps that we would consider in best practices if you're looking for a curriculum. One is to have health educators review the curricula. It's really important to kind of get their perspective and how it fits in within the entire health education framework. It's going back to what Christina was talking about, how schools are really these hubs of public health, and we need to include our health educators and everyone in the community in considering what are appropriate curriculum. Also have teens review the curricula. We have teen focus groups in Los Angeles that really give such valuable insight to curricula development. They tell us if activities are going to work, if language is appropriate, and if the materials are really going to work within the diverse communities we're dealing with. We also modify the curricula and choose ways to implement while still maintaining fidelity. So fidelity is the all-important thing when you're looking at an evidence-based curricula. You want to be able to have flexibility that allows you to still measure impact, to still say that the curricula is going to change behavior, change cognitive attitudes. Whatever you're trying to measure, you need to be able to be flexible but also show impact.
Okay, so what curriculum did we use with the Start Strong project? We actually looked at a variety of different...
Oh, just one second, Nancy, let me just introduce. So we now have Nancy from Emily to Nancy over from Wichita, just so people know who's speaking.
Okay, thanks, David. We looked at a variety of different programs and curriculums before we made the decision on either Safe Dates or the 4th-R, and both of these are evidence-based curriculums, and they were the ones that were available in 2008. Since then, there has been a new curricula for those of you who would like to know about this one. It's called Shifting Boundaries, and it's by Nan Stein and Bruce Taylor, if you want to look that one up and see if that one might be something appropriate for you. But we're going to talk about Safe Dates and 4th-R.
And I can't stress the importance of evidence-based curriculum. That was important to our funders, and it was important to our schools that that's what we used on this particular grant. So 7 of our communities, of our 11 communities, use Safe Dates. That would be Bridgeport, Los Angeles, Austin, Oakland, California, Indianapolis, Boston, and Atlanta. And then there were 4 of us who used the 4th R. Christina, whom you've heard earlier, from Rhode Island, Idaho, Bronx, New York, and myself used the 4th R.
And I'm Nancy. I'm putting links into for those, I added Shifting Boundaries and also for Safe Dates and 4th R, so for people who are wanting to get things. So let's do a little poll of the audience and get a sense of, have you used any of these curriculums? So let's go ahead and open it up. Have you used Safe Dates? Have you used 4th R? Have you used both? Have you used neither? I think we got all the mathematical combinations that we could get, so let's go ahead and see, and I think people are seeing the votes as we go. So overwhelmingly, 3/4 of our audience have used neither curriculum, and there's a little percentage of people using Safe Dates and only very few who have used 4th R or both of our audience. So these are just some of the curriculum that are out there. Not the only way of doing the work, but what they will be sharing a lot about. So I see 80% of the people have not used either of these. So that's very interesting as we see. So let me move the poll back off the screen, and why don't we go back to you, Nancy, to talk, Paige, actually, why don't you start talking about Safe Dates, Paige? Oh, I jumped ahead of both of us are doing it at one time.
Sorry.
Now you got it. So, Paige, why don't you talk about Safe Dates, then Nancy will come back to talk a little bit more about 4th R.
Sure. Safe Dates, and you can see here in the slide, it is a 10-session curriculum. It's the difference between Safe Dates and 4th R. That's a major difference. And then another major difference is that you can use your own facilitators as opposed to classroom teachers. But other things to point out, Safe Dates is tied to state requirements. And it also really has a strong focus on things like positive communication, on anger management, conflict resolution. And 2 important things at the end of there's 8 sessions, and then there is a session that is a poster contest and a session that is a play. And what's great about these 2 things is that they are very interactive, they're fun, and there's some freedom in those 2 things to make it fun, to adapt it to your own climate and culture, and to maintain fidelity while you do that. So Nancy, 4th R.
Okay. Well, the 4th R is a little bit longer. It is 17 to 21 lessons, depending on what your district will allow you to do. Some districts had to adopt it a little bit due to restrictions within their district. But it's broken down into 3 different components. You've got a healthy growth and sexuality component. You've got substance use and abuse. And then you've also got then the healthy relationship, or they call it the personal safety and injury prevention component. And all of these kind of interact with each other. For instance, like the drug, substance abuse and use one, it really talks about if you're using drugs, how does that affect your decisions about relationships? How does that affect all of your decision making? But it does try to relate some of these topics back to the relationship issue. So it's really kind of a bit broader in its scope, and if you're working with a district that has to provide also the substance use and abuse curriculum or some sort of education around that, that could be a selling point for using the 4th R.
So,
okay.
Paige, why don't you talk more a little, oh, I'm sorry, you were going to talk, Nancy, you were going to talk about the significant outcomes of Safe Dates?
Yeah. So the outcomes that we studied before we picked the 4th R, because the 4th R actually comes out of Canada. So it's a rather new curriculum to the United States, but it is widely used in Canada, all the way across the continent there. So the study that they did of more than 1,700 students, and they followed up after 2.5 years of post-intervention, they found that the students were making healthier choices compared to the peers who received just the health class as usual, just whatever the normal health curriculum was. And you can see there on the slide, it talks a little bit more about some of the, specifically what were some of the highlighted evidence pieces that came out of that. Reduced dating violence, especially for boys in the intervention schools. And then an interesting little factoid was reported higher condom use, especially for boys in the intervention schools. You want to advance?
Of course, Nancy, 4th R is not just a dating violence curriculum, but a full health curriculum, so that is something that would be a reasonable thing to expect.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, and
oh, I'm sorry. I believe that on the Safe Dates curriculum, it also had some significant outcomes, and this again is based on the data that came out that we looked at as we were deciding on curriculums. According to the original research study on Safe Dates, the adolescents who were exposed to Safe Dates in the 8th or 9th grade, and then they were followed up 4 years later, it showed that there was less severe physical perpetration at all 4 of the follow-up periods that they had there, and as you can see there, 56 to 92% less dating violence, victimization, and perpetration 4 years post-exposure to Safe Dates. Again, some significant numbers there within the Safe Dates curriculum.
Great. Well, thank you. And then I just want to, Suzanne pointed out on 4th R that 4th R is also being used in Alaska, so which might have more similarities, which is next to Canada, but that's another part where we're going on. So, Nancy, where are the classes that we have done these different curricula?
Well, you can see there's a variety of classes where it fit in, because you really have to work with your school and what your school is going to allow and where they see it fitting. So health classes were some of them. Some of our schools have what in my district was called advisory. It's kind of like a homeroom time for kids. English classes, math, social studies, history, science, some teen leadership. It kind of, I think another consideration when you're looking at where you want to put the curriculum, you want to think about where are you going to hit the most students. And for instance, some of your core classes like math and science and social studies, generally that is required by all of the students in that particular grade, whereas some of the other classes that they can choose, you may not hit all of the students. So just something to think about as you're looking at where you're going to put curriculum.
Yeah, Nancy and Paige, there's a few questions that have come up. One of them is probably beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about, was what were the measures and how were the teens evaluated on these pieces. And I think for that, unless if either of you are want to talk much about methodology, we probably can, I would check out the websites for those, and they would refer to the studies that would people talking about. There are some pre-post tests that were done and tests that were follow-up studies, but is there anything that you want to say about the methodology, or just other than referring people, because we're not really doing a research one on each of these curriculum on today's session. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you've got it right. I think we're happy to provide the citations to all of this research. If anyone interested would just email us and let us know that that's what you want, we'd be happy to share that with you.
And you'd get it also on the websites for both of them. They'll be happy. They refer, if I'm right, to those there. Adrienne, you going to add something?
I was going to say quickly, I know someone brought up a question about a school-wide component. And with Safe Dates, we really took advantage of the poster contest to make that sort of a public art project in the school. And our schools in Bridgeport are K-8, so the younger kids all the way down to kindergarten would come and see the posters, and it gave a chance for the middle schoolers to explain what they learned. And then we also really ramped up the play in some of the schools and performed it for the entire school, or we performed it to a couple of the younger grades with some of our older students. So there's different ways that you can adapt it, expand it, and make it work in a bigger or a smaller way.
And I think it's really important, the piece that you're making about how that it is not just the curriculum, but it is a school-wide piece. And of course, in Start Strong, there were many components that were being done. And even in the one that you didn't do on Shifting Boundaries, they actually tested a classroom only versus classroom and the school-wide, and they found that the classroom only did not have any impact, whereas it had to do some of the school-wide work to make some of the impact. So that's there. Another question was about on the classes one. And I think it's a great question. Is how do you get the teacher buy-in when teachers are being graded on the test, and that's the metric that they're being given? So how are some of the ways that you were able to get that engagement in the classrooms? I think actually we're going to be talking about that. Am I right? We're actually going to talk about that a little later, I realized. So maybe we'll come back to that question, because I realize there's another slide that Nancy will be talking about a little later. I think that gets to that. So let's move on to talking about safe dates. And this is Paige.
Yes.
Oh, no, sorry. No, this is going to be Lily. We're going to have Emily actually talk about this, right?
Okay,
Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, I'm sorry, Emily or Paige. I see both names on the list.
It's teamwork here. So Safe Dates, we got a lot of valuable quotes and feedback from our facilitators. Both, since Paige mentioned, they can either be staff from our organization, or they can be school-based staff. And some of the interesting things I noticed and feedback I got was that the facilitators themselves learned a lot going through the curriculum and learning it. They learned a lot about healthy relationships. And so there were even personal feedback from facilitators on how much they learned about what is the vocabulary and what does a healthy relationship look like. Our activities were well received, that they kept the students thinking and moving and engaging on sometimes difficult topics. And one of my favorite quotes from a facilitator was around seeing the kids light up when we took the time to talk about their relationships with each other, with boyfriends, girlfriends, with their parents, that it really allowed them space that school often doesn't anymore. And they saw new sides of the children that they work with every day. And that was one of my favorite impacts.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Emily. So let's talk a little bit about a quote from the 4th R. And why don't we have Christina, I think you're going to this, and then get followed up by Nancy.
Yes, you guys can read the quote that was that's already up there. But while you guys do that, I also wanted to share with you guys a story that I heard from one of our facilitators, our teachers, our health teacher, Karen. She was a teacher in Highlander Charter School. For any of those Rhode Islanders on the call, know what I'm talking about. And Karen always stressed to me that her favorite thing about the 4th R was how role-playing is incorporated as a learning and a teaching strategy. Because as a health teacher, she always thought it was a challenge of assessing, if students are really actually learning what these social and emotional skills, these communication skills. And if they're learning them, do they actually know how to apply them? And role-playing, fulfills that. With role-playing, she's able to see how are they practicing those conflict resolution skills. And then it also, with the 4th R in particular, it gives the students the opportunity to create their own role plays where they can reflect scenarios of relationships that they're experiencing. So it not only is a great diagnostic tool for a teacher, but it's also a good snapshot of the relationship that our students are experiencing at the same time. And I will let Nancy tell you guys another story.
Well, when we did our training for the science teachers, because that's ultimately where we wound up having the curriculum land where it's now living, I had a teacher who was getting ready to do a rockets chapter, and she really wanted to do that. And so when she was sitting in the training, she was told by her superior that, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to do this 4th R stuff. And so she kind of went into it dragging her feet. And that summer, after she'd done the curriculum in her class, I ran into her at a garage sale. For those of you who like the garage sale, I do too. And I asked her, I said, well, how did it go? How did the curriculum go in your class? And she said, you know, the kids couldn't stop talking about it. She said, I couldn't hardly get through the lessons because they were like sponges. They just were absorbing all of this information, and they loved it. And total turnaround from what she had been when we did the training. And then later I found out, because I ran into her again in my neighborhood, and not at a garage sale, however. And she said that I think one of the other hesitations she had about the curriculum was that now she's currently in a divorce because she was actually in an abusive relationship. And it's really hard to teach this stuff if you're living in an unhealthy relationship. So.
Well, thank you for that story. And so let's move to ask a little bit. We've shared about 2 of the curriculum. And I'd like to get from the audience, what features do you think are important for selecting a curriculum for you? And so I'd love to hear from the audience. What are the pieces that you're looking for that you think are really important to being able to select a curriculum that's going to meet the needs of your community and the capacity of your organization? And so I'd love to really get a sense, these are 2 examples of 4th R and Safe Dates, but I think it's important, as most of you have not experienced with them, what are the pieces that you want to do? And so I see evaluation and activities, get out of the seat and hand activities, evidence-based interactive, hands-on, interactive, not too lecture-based, looking at being validated with the population, varied teaching strategies. A lot of people want to see different ways of teaching it. It's got to be engaging for students and fun, learning while having fun. And so, culturally appropriate, and I think that's an important piece where you can also be able to personalize the curriculum, and then it's going to be providing those true stories and being able to be very active. So I see a lot of common themes, and people are spending a lot of time around the adaptability and the pedagogy or the interactive and how it's going to be able to do that work. And there's very few curriculum that have been evaluated, but I think that it's important to learn the lessons from these, even if you're not going to be implementing these programs, learn the lessons learned to be able to help influence what you can do to something that's going to best meet your needs in your community. So Nancy, let's talk a little bit about working with the schools, and because I think this is going to get back to that, how we got the buy-in from the schools. So why don't you talk about how you go about doing this, working with schools?
All righty. Well, when you think about evaluating the environment that you're going to be working with, assess their readiness. Learn about what are their protocols, what are some of the priorities in that school, what are some of the challenges, who are the key decision makers, who do you need to talk to there. Identify who might be your potential challengers, who might not be on board with this, and think about strategies around that. But then on the flip side, who are your potential allies? Because you will have some in the school building. So figuring out who those people might be and just understanding your district structure just in general, so you know the hierarchy that exists there, because there is, and there's also, politics within every school building. So kind of getting some sort of understanding of that. Then number 2, inform your key stakeholders of your work. Who else needs to know? This is that who else question. Include both your high-level stakeholders like your school boards, your administrators, as well as your district teachers and principals. And then 3, determine what individuals or groups you must persuade. Is it a board decision? Is it your superintendents? What about your principals, teachers, parents, students, and who are your influencers of those people, thinking about that. Consider, is it administration buy-in versus teacher buy-in, and where do you start? Do you start with a teacher who can influence an administrator, or is it the other way around? But you do want to make sure that your teachers are on board. So finding that win-win, what does the school need, what are their needs, and how can you help them get where they're going is really a good place to start and something to think about. So also, as you're looking at those, who are those key allies or your champions within your school? Is it your parent-teacher organizations? Are there teacher groups within the school that could be helpful? Student government, do you have some clubs? Are there, is there some other place where you have allies that you can influence and that they can then influence the decision makers for that particular school? You need to be sure that you develop your case and develop it well. So what is the extent of the problem? You can use your national stats, and certainly on Futures Without Violence there is a plethora of data that you can find there, but also, do you have any local stats? Does your district collect any kinds of youth violence stats that you could utilize in your making your case? What are the best practices? Will you be using evidence-based curricula? Schools want to know that. That's really important to them. Does your program align with their standards? I can tell you in our district that was huge when we found what it was that our district had to do, and then being able to show within our curriculum that we can cover these bases for you. That really makes a difference for the school building because, they've only got so much time and so many resources. So if you can help them, you're going to be worlds ahead in making your case. And also looking at policies. Are there any policies in place that you can say this curriculum supports, the policy that you have for that school district? And then make your ask. Be really clear about it. Make sure that it's concise. And you say exactly what it is that you're going to do, and consider using your key allies or your champions that you've developed out of step 4 there to help you make that ask, because sometimes they can be good to have with you when you're trying to make that ask. Okay. As you can see on this slide, you can see that with our 11 sites, we started at a variety of points, but we're pretty heavy on the superintendent, director, and principal level, and then prior contact. Some of our communities already had contact within the school district, so that made it easier for them to have an in within the district. But generally speaking, we started pretty much at the administrative level, as you can see on that slide.
I think, Nancy, that's a really important one because I think a lot of people that do prevention work often start by trying to find the teacher that's open to them. But if you want to be able to really get the systematic engagement, you do need to go to that administrative level. And so the teacher, of course, can point you in the direction to find those people. But I just noted it was notable that you didn't have any as the teacher as your point of contact, unless they were a prior contact.
That's right, and these people are the decision makers up there at the top of the ladder there. So you really do want to start with them.
Great. So Paige, why don't we continue to talk about this question of getting accepted into the schools?
Sure. So you've got permission, and how do you really set this in stone? It's always great to get the media involved. This is a great headline. And newspapers really want to report positive things happening in the schools, and they're very eager to share the word. So that's really important, and that'll provide a lot of support for you, and you learn meet some great news contacts as you progress. You can call and update and keep everyone informed. Also, check the calendar, the public calendar, and see what kind of meetings are going on in the community that you could also step in and get involved with. There's a lot of issues in the domestic violence arena. There's a lot of tables in the juvenile justice arena that intersect with a lot of these issues in teen dating violence and healthy relationships education. And it's a great way to combine efforts to find out what other people are concerned about and see if there's some collaborative work that you can get involved in. The other thing is, we all know there's 1,000 health fairs that happen throughout the year. And just being a presence there and offering ongoing support and information, whether it's at health fairs or just being out there in the community, being out there at school PTO nights, just as a constant resource. And that also allows you to build relationships with parents and with community members and continue to get the word out about the good things that are happening. And then what we always wonder about and are scared about, but is really important, is that big E word, evaluation. And that's very important as we do this work, that you can set up a system where you can track your progress. And so on the front end, you want to set up a procedure for doing that and how you're going to consistently maintain that. And then the last thing is sustainability. One thing that I learned is that this is great work, and and people will come back and ask you to keep doing it and keep doing it. And so when we talk about sustainability, you really want to be prepared for that. What I found is we would teach students in 7th grade, and then the school would want us to come back to teach the same students in 8th grade again. And then this year we even had 9th grades at high schools come and ask us to come back. So it is something that tends to sort of snowball because it is very necessary. I know Christina and Nancy both have pointed out that there's not a lot of health education or healthy relationships education happening. So you may want to be prepared for success. But what if you get rejected? So what happens when schools say no? And we can all understand the burdens that our schools face from academic pressures alone and all that needs to happen in a school day. So it's very likely that we may hit a brick wall there. And if that happens, then never fear, there are many other ways, because middle schoolers are not just in school, they're in places after school in the community as well. And so look for other schools that might be open. There might be some charter schools. There might be different, some homeschool collaboratives. There might be some magnet schools that might be more open. And then after school is a great arena that we're going to talk a little bit about. But to consider those other settings is a great way to reroute your plan and consider a new way. And these places can range from boys and girls clubs, church youth groups, other youth groups. I myself am a youth director by trade, so I love working with youth outside of school because they're a little different when they're out of that institutional setting. One of the challenges with this age group is that they're not as mobile as older teens, but they are often in many, many programs across town. So there's a lot of opportunities to engage them outside of school as well.
This is Christina, and to add to that is that just because the school is not right, says no to you at that moment, I encourage you to still maintain a connection with that school because you're still a real resource for them, and just, make sure the lines of communication stay open and find out more. Why is it not appropriate? Why can't you be there? Identify those barriers and, and just, I stress that you are still a resource, you're still valuable to them, and you can still provide other services to the school, even though you're not able to implement your curriculum in that school.
Great. So let's move to the next part and talk about some of the implementation strategies. And Emily, why don't you talk about once you get into the school, then it raises the question of what's next. So.
Yeah, and I think that the now what kind of starts when you're even making your case to get accepted. You really need to know your community and consider your educational environment. And that's part of that kind of fact-finding and relationship building and building up to the ask to come in and work with the school. Some considerations to have are what kind of environment are you in? Are you in a rural environment? Are you an urban, suburban? Are you working with a huge school district or a smaller school district? How well do you know the administrators based on that kind of dynamic in the school district? Are you working in a private, public, or a charter school? And each three of those schools have different regulations and different authorities that they're responding to. I also think it's important to consider the level of parent involvement you see in the educational environment. Is there a very active PTA? Are there active parent groups on campus? And the socioeconomic, cultural, and language accessibility issues. I think those are really key before you even step foot in a classroom or start training teachers to really understand your community and your school environment.
You know, there's a really great question, and I think, Emily, I'll put it to you, but I think all of you can talk about this. How do you communicate with your school staff? And that sometimes the problem is they've got school going on all day, and sometimes it's hard to connect with them face-to-face. So what are some of the strategies that you've had in being able to keep that ongoing connection with school staff?
I think you personalize it. That's what we've done. We don't just say it's just going to be email, it's just going to be text, it's just going to be phone. We work with each individual to figure out, like, what's the best way to get in line with them. Is there a best time is to call them at 7:30 in the morning on their cell phone? We know that. It's key part of relationship building. And, you know, the information we're giving is so critically important, but the relationships, the healthy relationships we're developing with the staff are just as important to get us the accessibility and be able to teach young people and be able to teach and engage the facilitators and staff.
Okay, great. So why don't we talk some more about implementation strategies?
Oh, I just messed that up. I told you if it messed up, it would be my fault. So implementation strategies. We talked a little bit about the method of delivery, choosing program staff from your organization versus school staff. And just like I'm going to reiterate that school staff sometimes aren't as comfortable with delivering this content and handling the questions. We've had questions snowball when we're talking about sexual assault and healthy relationships to sex ed type questions that you have to be ready to refer out or deal with in an appropriate manner. And some school staff are not prepared to do that or feel comfortable with that. Also, like Nancy mentioned the story about staff being in an abusive relationship, that makes it really hard to deliver a healthy relationship curriculum. Program staff, it's going to be a resource and a sustainability issue like Paige mentioned. So keep that in mind too, that you're going to be sending staff into schools for multiple dose and saturation activities with a school. You're going to be giving up that time and going to have to find a way to fund them or get the volunteers and train them and oversee them. So you have to make a decision based on your organization and your grant requirements, etc. Special considerations, the need for staff training, the comfort level of the teacher, like I mentioned, and collaboration with support staff so that you're providing a collaborative environment and ongoing support. We had check-ins with our teachers that were providing education. We had an open line of communication. They had our facilitators' direct line, had priority status, so when an email came across from someone from the school, it got answered immediately and we got back to them. So they felt like there was a trusting relationship with our organization. It's also really important to build in those resources and referrals for staff, program staff, and school staff so that they know those referrals and their community well when they go into the classroom or present this information in front of students and talk to them about it. So talking about implementation strategies, how do we get buy-in from teachers? The different organizations in Start Strong provided stipends and rewards, gift cards, but they don't necessarily have to be monetary. A meal, continuing education credits for teachers, certificates of attendance, professional growth points, depending on how your district is structured. Those are really valuable for teachers too, for program staff, and for the school district in general. In LA, we didn't provide monetary awards, but what was most important to our school district was covering the cost of substitute teachers when the classroom teachers needed to attend trainings on the curriculum. And so that allowed the teachers to leave their classroom and do the trainings without worrying about what their kids are doing, because there's a substitute that's sanctioned and in their classroom. It is important to be careful with the rewards. Just make sure you're working with people who are invested in the project and not just the reward. And be sure you're partnering with a school district that allows rewards. It's really important to get to that upper level with administrators to figure out what the school district allows. Do they allow a gift card, or can they only be in-kind or like food-based rewards or stipends? For instance, the New York Department of Education prohibits any monetary rewards directly to teachers. So they had to be more creative in how they engaged and sustained their teacher involvement.
So we're going to, Christina, why don't you talk about this? And I just want to note that this is a great conversation, but we are starting to go on time, so try to be succinct. So talk about some of the unforeseen challenges.
Unfortunately, they do exist. I wish that they didn't. But these unforeseen challenges are things that none of us could ever predict on. So, like, for example, budget cuts, staff turnover, or if there's like a school or a district change, or if there's even like, you know, for here in Rhode Island, a school gets closed down. You cannot predict that, and you really have no control over that situation. But even if it's a budget cut or staff turnover, this is your opportunity to be really adaptable, you know, and be receptive to the outside signals. Be agile enough to change course, and flexible enough to respond to new opportunities. You just have to be as responsive and also make sure that, you know, you are flexible and adaptive.
Great. Paige, do you want to add something to this?
I had mentioned it before, but this is an area that became a huge opportunity for us because I use my AmeriCorps members, which at this point has become a great youth employment program in Bridgeport. So as students who are old enough, they make money for doing this work, and then it doesn't cost the school system anything to have us come in and implement the curriculum.
Great. Oh, great. That's wonderful. So, Christina, why don't you talk a little bit about some of these other ways that you've been able to get some linked to out-of-school events?
And, you know, it's really important to also expand your efforts that you are doing in school to out-of-school events. You know, you have to echo the lessons learned in the classrooms and, you know, just to solidify that environment that supports healthy relationships. So as you'll see, there are some examples of some Start Strong sites that they did, and I'll show you guys some more. So, for example, ways that Start Strong Bronx, for example, you know, they would do lunchtime groups, and they would even do assemblies after school. Start Strong Indianapolis and Atlanta, they did a PSA contest. Start Strong Idaho, there were those poetry and writing images that you saw in the past. So it's really important to just expand your efforts as far as you can, and don't feel like you're just, you know, you have to be stuck in the parameters of the classroom.
Right, and I really have to reiterate, I think it's so important, Christina, because, you know, students, while they're in school a lot, that's not where their whole life is, and if they want to get things reinforced and strengthened, we have to be able to find ways to be able to really touch young people wherever they are spending time in their lives. So let's move to, I'm going to move to the next slide, and Paige, I think you're going to talk a little bit more about, we're going to jump to a little bit more about out-of-school setting pieces.
Great. So out-of-school settings, we keep bouncing here. Why do it? Because they're there. Generally, anytime we want to work with youth, it's always easier to go where they already are. We all know that recruitment can be the most difficult piece of starting any program. Middle school age is a little bit different than older teens. I mentioned this before. Usually they're enrolled in programs at Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCA, lots of different after-school programs. Many schools run after-school programs. But I would also encourage trying to start your own after-school program at your office or at a local community center. And you may find that after you've been in the schools a lot, you've been a presence, they'll come and go the extra mile to find you at that after-school place because they already know you and have that relationship. I know that holidays are also great opportunities. We were able to run a big youth summit on Martin Luther King Day this year for our middle schoolers, and we told all of our middle schoolers that we were teaching Safe Dates to, and we were running small youth groups in the schools with, and we had about 105 middle schoolers come to a local college for a day of fun and games and workshops. So that's always fun. And then right now in the summer, we're holding a little camp every day from noon to 3. You know, you can't do anything in the summer with middle schoolers before noon. That's probably not a good idea. But I have my college interns running Healthy Relationships Camp in the summer, and they all signed up because of the previous relationships they had during their Safe Dates classes. So it can be a lot of fun. And a lot of middle schoolers you'll find are different outside of school. You know, sometimes school can be scary and, you know, it's that institutionalized setting. So out-of-school settings are challenging. You may get some one day, but may not come the next day. With this age group, they depend on mom and dad a lot for transportation, and sometimes mom and dad work, and sometimes there's one mom that can drive several people, but she can't do it every day. Oftentimes at this age, I know in Bridgeport, a lot of my middle schoolers aren't really allowed to ride the bus by themselves yet. So transportation is an issue. You also have a greater responsibility with permission slips and making sure that all forms are filled out. And then the other thing is to remember that there's a need to put a theme around that programming. For this age group, it's great if you can do healthy relationships work under a arts theme, and maybe it's a drama camp. Maybe they're going to perform a skit that's going to be something about healthy relationships. And in the summer, we look at the story of Othello. We look at relationships through that. But singing is a great way. Sing some songs and talk about the themes in the songs. Sports is always obviously a great topic for this age group. And anything with music, anything that, you know, even just homework help is great to engage this age group. And then opportunities. You know, this is a wonderful way to build youth leadership, and you that become involved at this age, they'll want to come back, and then you may find that you need to find a place for them. You need to build kind of a leadership pipeline where there's a next step for them. Maybe the next year they're helping to lead a group, or they're helping to run the after-school program, or maybe you start a youth leaders group. But it's always great to create that next step for them. And especially if you've created this safe space and they've had a wonderful experience. I know when we've done the Girls Circle model, I know some of you have mentioned you use that. Those groups get to be so close. It's important to have a next thing for them, that it doesn't just end. So it becomes another level, but it's also a great opportunity. And again, all of these things are great for them on their resumes as they get older to have leadership opportunities. And we all know as everyone gets older, the relationship issues get more complex, so it's great to keep having that support for them as well.
Great. Thank you. So, Nancy, let's talk about, in the text chat, I'm seeing a discussion about some of the sustainability issues. How do we find ways to get enough staff and funding? How do we find ways to keep the school to be involved and be able to integrate some of this? So I think maybe these are some of the things that you're going to be talking to us about.
Yeah, or at least starting the dialogue here. I can speak to my community, and I think part of our sustainability for us is that teachers, in our case, are teaching it, and so what we provided is the training for the teachers, and we provided all of the curriculum. As most of you know, schools don't have any money, and or most schools don't, and so they really relish the opportunity to take advantage of those who would help them in some way. And if you're hitting on some of their benchmark requirements that they have to have, that they're mandated to have in their school, if you provide the training, if you provide the materials, even if that means going to a local community funder to see if they would fund dollars for curriculum for healthy relationship education in the schools, I think it would be hard to say, no, we don't want that. So, that's just an idea, another way to get the buy-in from the schools is if you provide all of that. And I think Emily's got some more to share.
Yeah, I think it's really important to be creative, not just in how you're delivering the curriculum and how you're building relationships, but to think about your partnerships really strategically. In LA, we partner with law enforcement and probation a lot, and the campus police. We get to attend an executive violence prevention district meeting, and we get to know all the players there that work on the civil rights aspects, on the Title IX enforcement, and all the intersecting areas. Another thing is bullying. That's a huge area in schools right now, and be creative in how you can incorporate healthy relationships into what schools are trying to provide to keep campuses safe. And Paige, I think you had a little bit more on the future.
Sure. And again, these middle schoolers are the high schoolers of tomorrow. So just keeping an eye on that future and taking advantage of the chance to introduce these young teens to other materials and to keep providing them with a challenge and a place to grow and to keep learning in this area, but to start leading in this area as well. It's the teachers who really learn the most. So putting those older teens in a leadership capacity will also solidify the learning for them. It'll be a great experience.
Right, and I think Bunny put it well in the text chat where she said watching 9th and 10th grade students grow is amazing as they become planners and presenters and play that important role. So I know we're getting to the end. I do want to come up with one question for the audience. Just how have you worked with, and love to see ideas from, because so many of you have done work in schools, how have you worked with students beyond the classroom presentations? What are some of the work? We've seen a lot about peer mentors and peer education type and leadership programs, but love to be able to see anything else that other people can write about how they have worked with students beyond classroom presentations, because it's not just about selecting the curriculum, but it's about moving forward to be able to create some of those changes, because I think you really shared some really great examples about ways to be able to do this. Girl Scouts, Juvenile Detention Center, so to become other places of some other settings that I have seen people doing. A Teen Alliance Council of 3 of the schools bringing together students. That's great. Setting up summer camps, web design, TV and video classes. Oh, those are some great examples of pieces that we're going to be able to see. So I do want to give enough room for people to be able to talk. So let's now also open this up, or if there's any last questions, we have a couple minutes before we have to conclude the session. So just keep on sharing. Teen Summits, Reporting Center for Youth. So these are great examples for people to be able to see doing this work. But let's, if there's any questions you have, this is the time you can be able to let us know and put that into the text chat. So along with the other ideas, and be able to do this. This has been really helpful, I think, in exploring and hearing about your experiences that each of you have been able to do, whether it's in Rhode Island, Kansas, California, or Connecticut. I think I got all the states, or in Massachusetts, though, sitting there. So great. So people just keep on giving us examples. So I know we've got this. Is there a way we can email the presentation out? Copies of the presentation will be going to be posted, including a recording of this will be posted on the Futures website. Let me go ahead and make a copy of where you can go to get that, and I will put that into the chat, though Lisa might be beating me to it. We'll see. And Lisa did give that, and I gave actually webinars, and this is actually for the specific one today. So we have all those information available, so you can get get that information available to you. So Lisa, why don't I hand it to you to sort of close today's session. This has been really great, getting a lot of fabulous information and sharing lessons.
Thanks, David. Thank you all for attending. We hope that you found this informative and that this will help your work in some way as you explore working with young people in schools and out of schools. Please do feel free to contact us with questions that might come up after you've absorbed some of this information. If there is evaluation information or other things that you can't find on websites, or you just want a little more help, feel free to email me at Futures Without Violence, and I'll see what I can do. But our speakers are all pretty nice and have agreed to share their contact information as well if there's something specific that you heard that you might want to know a little bit more about specifically from one of the speakers. We also have 2 more upcoming webinars in this Start Strong series. The next one will be August 7th, and you'll be hearing from Emily Austin again, joined by Barry Rosenbluth from Start Strong Austin to talk about policy change and the work that Start Strong did on that front. We'll also have our last webinar, September 17th, on the Start Strong evaluation. We'll be joined by our evaluation team at RTI International, and they'll be talking about some of what we've found from looking at Start Strong over the past 4 years. As a reminder, all of these webinars are recorded. You'll get access to the slides and anything else related at the link that I provided on the slide, but also the link that David posted as well. Those will both work. And I just thank everyone for attending. Did we lose you, David?
Okay. Oh, thank you all. So I guess that's it. So thank you all, and we will see you on August 7th for the next webinar on the Start Strong program. And so pleasure having everyone, and I especially want to thank all of our speakers, Emily, Christina Page, and Nancy for sharing today. So that concludes today's webinar, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.